Good afternoon. This is a great pleasure to welcome you to this panel about AI and future of humanity. This is a highly anticipated panel. We've been working on it, and I hope that both you are here and those who are online will have a chance to participate in the conversation. I heard that there's a pigeonhole, so hopefully you can send us some questions, and we can honor some of them. We have a heavy content to share with you today. Please have a seat. I'm going to introduce the panel shortly. As you know, AI is everywhere these days. 7 years ago, when we created this first summit, I was privileged to be at the inception of it and create this program. But at the same year, Stuart Russell was giving a TED Talk. And in that TED Talk, he came up with a holy cow moment because Lee Sedol was beaten by the AI Go. And hopefully, today, we can remember some of those holy cow moments with generative AI and maybe how this succession of important moments are changing the face of society and humanity. As you all know, AI is a general purpose technology and has boundless possibilities, but as many meaningful technology, it brings perils and principles and possibilities. So today the conversation is not only about governance of AI and what AI can do, but diving a little bit about civilization. You see, human intelligence has been the cornerstone of our civilization and how it was built. It brought forward agriculture, technology, industry, culture, and the intricate tapestry of our societies. But today we want to ask ourselves that question about how are we going to be harnessing this new form of intelligence that surrounds us, and how we're going to be benefiting from it. How can we create and develop AI systems that not only guided by, but also reflective of our aspirations, ethics, and values? So to really dive into this conversation, we have two illustrious speakers. Professor Stuart Russell, that is known all of you. I'm going to do a proper introduction shortly. Professor of AI at UC-Berkeley, but also an advocate of the meaning of AI and impact on humanity. And Baroness Joanna, who has been at the intersection and interplay of technology, policy, and governance, but also in the private sector. So let us welcome the two speakers today, and we're going to be embarking on a journey on talking about the impact of AI on civilization and how we can actually save that civilization. So without further ado, I'm going to welcome Professor Stuart Russell to join on stage for the first talk. And the session is divided into two keynotes and a panel conversation. So let me properly introduce Professor Russell. He's a true visionary in the field of artificial intelligence. He's a professor of computer science at the University of California, Berkeley. He's the holder of the Smith-Zadeh Chair in Engineering and director of the Center of Human Compatible AI at the Kavli Center for Ethics, Science, and the Public. He's also the recipient of the Ichkai Computers and Thought Award, an Excellent Research Award, and held the chair Blaise Pascal in Paris. In 2021, he received the Officer of the Board of the British Empire from Queen Elizabeth and gave the Reith Lectures. He is the Honorary Fellow of Wadham College, Oxford University, and Andrew Carnegie Fellow, and a Fellow of American Association of Artificial Intelligence. I'm going to be soon finishing. He serves as the co-chair of the World Economic Forum Global Future Council on AI and the OECD's expert group on AI future. His books that many of you may know, should know, is Artificial Intelligence, A Modern Approach, that is taught in more than 1,500 universities in 135 countries. His research covers a wide area of topics in artificial intelligence and a specific emphasis on long-term future of AI and its relation to humanity. What a better way to get started this conversation. Professor Russell. Give a hand for Professor Russell.
Thank you very much, Amir. It's a delight to be back in Geneva in person. Quite a lot has happened since our last meeting in 2019. So let me just remind everybody what we're talking about. Obviously, AI is about making intelligent machines. And for most of the history of the field, that has meant machines whose actions can be expected to achieve their objectives. This is the paradigm of problem-solving algorithms, of logic-based planning algorithms, of reinforcement learning algorithms, of Markov decision processes, of control theory, of operations research, of statistics, of economics. This is a very powerful model. But I will argue later that it's the wrong model. The goal of the field since the beginning has been general-purpose AI. Basically, AI that exceeds human capabilities along every relevant dimension. And we've made quite a lot of progress towards that goal. I would say that AI has been delivering significant breakthroughs on a regular basis since the 1950s. We saw in 2016 Go programs using reinforcement learning that can defeat the best human players. Another example, this is from my own group, methods based on large-scale probability models called probabilistic programs are running the monitoring system for the nuclear test ban treaty in Vienna. This shows the real-time accurate detection of a nuclear explosion in North Korea. And of course, we have self-driving cars, which in many ways are the flagship project of artificial intelligence, still taking their time to arrive, but I think capabilities are emerging that allow completely driverless taxi services that will gradually spread across the world. And then, of course, we have generative AI. First, the image generators, and then the language generators. So here's one of my favorite examples. Teddy bears mixing sparkling chemicals as mad scientists in a steampunk style. And within a second or two, the system generates this image, right? Which is pretty amazing. I don't think there's anything closely resembling this image in the training data. And don't forget, this is a photorealistic image with shadows, fur, transparent objects, reflective objects. It's taken human computer scientists tens of thousands of journal papers and millions of lines of code to produce computer graphics systems able to render that image. And here is a system that just bypasses all of that and does it by itself. It really is pretty amazing. And of course, we've seen, I'm not going to give you examples of the large language models producing text. I'm sure most of you, if not all of you, have spent many hours interacting with those systems, and you know exactly what I mean. So here's a slide that I first used in January 2015, a meeting in Puerto Rico organized by the Future of Life Institute to start thinking about the long-term question, what happens if we succeed in creating AI? And so the slide takes the form of an imaginary email conversation where superior alien civilization sends email to humanity@un.org. Be warned, we shall arrive in 30 to 50 years. And of course, humanity@un.org, this is, I mean no disrespect to the United Nations, says, humanity is currently out of the office. We will respond to your message when we return. Smiley face, right? Very important to get the smiley face in. That was my sense in 2015 of how the human race, represented by its governments and international organizations, was dealing with the question of what happens if we succeed in our goals in artificial intelligence, where hundreds of thousands of researchers all over the world are working hard to achieve that goal. So, I think partly due to the emergence of generative AI, things have changed a bit. And in particular, a very short sequence of events. On March 14th, GPT-4 was released. A week later, Microsoft published a paper showing the results of several months of work with GPT-4 by extremely distinguished computer scientists who concluded that GPT-4 shows sparks of artificial general intelligence. In other words, exactly the kind of intelligence that I mentioned at the beginning. And then a week after that, the Future of Life Institute released an open letter signed by many distinguished leaders in industry and in academia, asking that there be a pause on the training and release of large language models more capable than GPT-4. That was immediately poo-pooed by the wise and the mighty. Of course, no one's going to pay any attention to that. But in fact, there hasn't been a model released since then that's more powerful than GPT-4. Coincidence? You be the judge. But anyway, I think the net result was that humanity returned to the office, right? They saw the email from the aliens, and they said, oh my gosh, what are we going to do now? And the next day, UNESCO issued an urgent call directly responding to the open letter saying to all the member states, get your act together, take the recommendations and turn them into legislation as soon as possible. OpenAI itself called for governments to act to regulate these systems. China issued draft regulations that many people interpret as a ban on large language models, requiring safety properties that large language models cannot satisfy. The US Senate got into the act, the European Union called for an emergency global summit, etc., etc., etc. And on June 7th, the British Prime Minister Rishi Sunak announced that the UK would be convening that emergency global summit specifically on the question of AI safety. So, I'm a little more optimistic as a result of all this activity. I think the governments and international organizations are listening. So what do we tell them? I think one of the questions they want to know is, well, where are we and how are things going to evolve? And I don't have a crystal ball, but I think anyone looking at what's happening would tell you the large language models are generating already a tsunami of applications. And I put an asterisk next to large language models because they exhibit some weaknesses, particularly the tendency to tell complete lies with a straight face that makes them unusable in many, many real-world situations. And in fact, OpenAI itself says do not use it in a high-stakes application. So as you can imagine, everyone is trying to figure out solutions to that, and there are already versions of system architectures that try to constrain the output, that use the language model as an interface to a database, and so on. On the physical side, I would say it's less of a tsunami, but there is a rising tide. And we are starting to see trucking, we're starting to see warehouse robots, agricultural robots, construction robots, and they will only improve their capabilities as the AI side allows them to be more robust and more flexible, which has been the problem. You can't put a traditional industrial robot into an unstructured environment because it doesn't really close the loop through perception in the right way. And then we have to say, okay, what's coming after that, right? What is gestating in the research labs of the world? And you get different opinions on this. Some people think we're just going to scale up bigger and bigger and bigger language models, and that will produce the kind of general purpose AI that I talked about. I have my doubts about that, as does OpenAI, for example. And one of the reasons is that we're actually running out of text in the universe. Yeah. There isn't enough text left of high quality in the universe to do an order of magnitude larger system. Also, as we've seen, simply training a system to imitate human linguistic behavior does not seem to result in a system that creates its own consistent internal model of the world, which is the basis for a system that's capable of telling the truth, for example. So I actually think that there will be new technological breakthroughs, possibly involving hybrids between deep learning systems that are the foundation of large language models and probabilistic programming systems, which are much more expressive, that can capture complex concepts very concisely, that have much less data requirements to learn those concepts. But exactly how that hybrid works is still anyone's guess. Another big missing piece is the ability of AI systems to plan and manage their behavior over very long timescales. So what does very long mean? Well, if you think about your presence here in this workshop, if you're here for 3 days and then you had maybe a day to travel here and a day to travel back, you're talking about hundreds of millions of motor control steps involved in that activity. AlphaGo, for all its amazing capabilities to look ahead into the future of the game, can only do about 50 steps. So if AlphaGo were controlling a robot, it would be looking ahead about 1/10 of a second into the future. So not very helpful for going to a conference. So we don't really have good solutions for how to make this kind of thing happen. We know, just from introspection as humans, that we do it using hierarchical abstraction, right? That we think at many, many levels, many, many different timescales seamlessly, and somehow sew all those levels together so that our behavior is coherent and successful over long timescales. So let's suppose that, in fact, we succeed. Sorry, going in the wrong way. Right, let's suppose we, in fact, succeed in these additional breakthroughs, and now we have real general-purpose AI. Well, what would the implication be? One obvious implication is that we can do, by definition, what humans already know how to do, which is to deliver a fairly decent standard of living to some fraction of the people on Earth. But we could do this at much greater scale and at much lower cost, because automation means you don't have to have expensive and difficult to train human beings in the pipeline. So if we got the politics right, we could deliver that same standard of living, that nice, comfortable, middle-class standard of living, to everyone on Earth. That would be about a 10x, not 10%, 1,000% increase in the GDP of the world. And if you do what economists do, which is to think about that as an income stream and then collapse it into a cash amount that you would get up front, that tells you a lower bound on the value of general-purpose AI as a technology, which comes to $13.5 quadrillion. Right? And this is a lower bound because there are many additional things that we could deliver that we don't currently deliver even in the so-called advanced economies. Right? We could have healthcare that's much better, much more optimized to the individual, their own physiology, their own genotype, and so on. Similarly, for education, we know that an expert human tutor can deliver 2 or 3 times the quality of education that a classroom can deliver, but we don't have enough expert human tutors, and we never could, to do that for every child. But now, perhaps, we can. So that would be an extraordinary advance. And I think we're already seeing AI contributing to the rate of scientific discovery, for example, with AlphaFold allowing us to predict the structures of every single protein in the natural world. this is an incredibly important advance. That's like the biologists are like kids in a candy store. What else happens if we succeed? Well, this is Alan Turing, and this is what he said. It seems probable that once the machine thinking method had started, it would not take long to outstrip our feeble powers. At some stage, therefore, we should have to expect the machines to take control. Let me try and put that in a slightly less pessimistic way. How do we retain power over entities more powerful than us forever? For some of you, that may seem equally pessimistic, right? There could not possibly be an answer to that question. So let me rephrase it in an even more optimistic way. What is a mathematically defined problem such that if the machine solves it, and will allow it to have an arbitrary degree of intelligence in solving it, what is the problem such that if the machine solves it, we are happy with the result, right? We're happy with what the machine does. And your first thought might be, oh, yeah, reinforcement learning will specify a reward function, and then the system will optimize it for us. And yeah, that's exactly what King Midas said, right? His reward function is everything I touch should turn to gold, and that's exactly what he got. And then, of course, too late, he realizes that his food is now solid gold, and his water is now liquid gold, and his family are now golden statues. So that's not the solution. But there is a related solution that looks like this. Constitutionally, the machines have to act in the best interests of humans, but they know that they don't know what those best interests are. And so this gets us out of this problem where we have to specify the reward function for the machine, the objective. And you can turn this into a mathematically defined thing called an assistance game, and you can actually solve these assistance games, at least in simple cases, and you can show that the assistance game solvers, no matter how well they do it, they are going to be deferential to humans, they're going to be cautious, minimally invasive in their behavior, they're not going to want to mess with the world in ways that they're not sure that we prefer. And in the extreme case, if we want to switch them off, they want to be switched off, right? And these are all mathematical results within this analytical framework. So this is a new type of AI system, and you can tell it's new because under the European Union AI Act, it's not an AI system at all, because the European Union AI Act currently says there have to be human-defined objectives. And in this case, there aren't. And we can show that actually we should build these systems. It is in our interests to build systems that operate as assistance game solvers. So I'm going to sort of gradually wrap up and raise a couple of points about the future. One is, if we have AI systems that give us what we want, in quotes, right, don't we end up in the Wall-E world, where AI systems run our civilization, human beings lose the incentive to learn, to become capable of running our own civilization. We've basically passed that responsibility on, leaving ourselves enfeebled, infantilized, which I think Wall-E shows in a very insightful way. Hopefully, this is not what happens, right? Because this is not the future we want. And so the AI system should understand that this is not the future we want, right? They should not do everything for us. So when we ask, how should AI systems behave, there are a few really knotty problems that we have to get through that moral philosophers have been struggling with for a long time. Right? First of all, when you're acting on behalf of many people, as AI systems will inevitably have to do, how do you trade off the interests of those people? How do you protect the rights of individuals against the well-being of the many, and so on? And this is an ongoing debate. but AI systems are going to embody a solution to that whether we like it or not. So we had better try and figure out what solution we want them to embody. Another interesting issue is how should AI systems take into account the interests not just of present humans, but future humans? How should AI systems make decisions when those decisions affect who is going to exist in the future? These are really difficult questions, and if we don't get the answers right, we may not like the outcomes. The way we actually think about avoiding the Wall-E world is to think about the value of human autonomy, which means our ability to function independently, the freedom to do what isn't in our own best interests, so that the AI system is not just sort of putting us on guide rails and shoving us along those rails, but actually leaving us the freedom to make mistakes and decide things our own way. And ultimately, if the AI systems determine that we are better off without them, will we have the wisdom to let them leave? I, for one, would be very happy if the AI systems decide that we are better off without them. That would mean that we have, in fact, built them the right way. But we'll see whether we have that wisdom. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Stuart, for this insightful remark and anchoring the conversation in the alignment questions. But now let's turn our attention to someone whose extensive career spans across technology policy and social impact. It's my pleasure to introduce Baroness Joanna Shields, who's spent her career building companies, products, and platforms that have transformed markets and reshaped industries. She is currently the CEO of BenevolentAI, accelerating the company's growth and transformation from a startup to a client-stage AI-enabled drug discovery company. But also, she has over 3 decades of experience building and scaling some of the world's best-known technology companies, including Facebook, Bebo, AOL, and Google. Prior to joining BenevolentAI, Joanna Shields served in the UK government as Minister for Internet Safety and Security, Digital Economy Advisor to the Prime Minister, UK Ambassador for Digital Industries, and Chair and CEO of Tech City UK. She is the founder of We Protect Global Alliance, a life peer of the House of Lords, and have been co-chair of the Global Partnership of Artificial Intelligence, GPAI, from 2020 to 2022. We're eager to hear your insight on guiding the next AI renaissance with integrity and humanity.
Thank you.
Please give her a warm hand for Joanna Shields.
Thank you. Thank you, Amir, and thank you, Stuart, for your wisdom and perspectives. And it's incredible to spend these couple of days with all of you. As we draw this extraordinary gathering to a close today, I think it's really important to recognize the unprecedented acceleration of AI in its current evolution. But it was not without anticipation. To paraphrase Hemingway's famous quote, we arrived at this intense time of transformative change gradually and then all of a sudden. This conference, which is now in its 7th year, serves as a testament to the many well-organized and focused initiatives that have come before. And it's safe to say that the world, though, was caught off guard in the past year by the speed of innovation and transformation happening around generative AI. With the launch of ChatGPT, suddenly all the world's attention is focused on this issue. But it's left businesses and regulators alike playing catch-up. To be clear, though, we cannot suppress a force that's this strong. The inexorable progress of technology will continue with or without us. Foundational models and GPTs have become a cornerstone of development already, and there's exponential benefits to be gained and derived, so it's literally not feasible to contemplate halting them their deployment, or their development. Nor can we really allow ourselves to become mere spectators and divert our eyes and our gaze as we watch inevitable things happen to us. Instead, we need to reflect and chart a course that aligns our progress with our values. Now, passive acquiescence of control of these technologies to a few actors would really have a profound impact on the greater aspiration of all of us. So we must, all of us, whether you're here in the audience, whether you're a politician or a policymaker, we have to engage in shaping this future together. We need to ask ourselves, how do we cross this bold new horizon with integrity, truth, fairness, and trust in our humanity? But let's not make people fearful of progress. Like, we can't lose sight of the fact that there's huge opportunities and upsides to this technology. And a technological revolution of this magnitude has the power to advance human progress on an unprecedented scale. Now, some have referred to what we're experiencing as a new enlightenment. And I do think it's true that AI and large language models serve as modern-day intellectual catalysts. They enhance our ability to absorb and process information. They connect us with vast stores of human wisdom and creativity, and provide us access to the accumulated wealth of all the generations past. Moreover, just as the Enlightenment period fostered a culture of critical thinking and reasoning, generative AI and language models prompt us to challenge the status quo. Engaging with these technological marvels enables us to scrutinize our assumptions, critically assess evidence, and reveal previously unknown insights. So what we're witnessing today is a renaissance in creativity and innovation, driven by human ingenuity working hand in hand with AI. It is a historic opportunity. We've seen remarkable things that AI systems can do. But now is our chance to come together and take these capabilities to the next level. By shaping a common approach, we will be taking the first steps towards a future where AI can be what I would like to call the middleware of human ingenuity and creativity. A tool for knowledge sharing and education with the power to accelerate utilitarian answers to global challenges. A future where we have supercharged our progress towards achieving the UN Sustainable Development Goals. By placing human-centric values at the core of AI, we can all make this a reality. Now, putting this into practice when it comes to certain disciplines like science, for example, it remains critical that humans are in the loop. For instance, at BenevolentAI, where I lead as CEO, the organizing principle for us is to augment human intelligence with AI. Our heritage is understanding the language of science. We spent over 5 years developing AI knowledge and exploration and predictive solutions that reason across all the world's biomedical information and enable scientists to combine that with multimodal data to uncover new insights that are not known and to accelerate the development of the R&D process. Our AI tools have been built for scientists, with scientists, to serve as catalysts in the process of discovery by intelligently interpreting vast amounts of data to identify patterns and make connections that are simply not possible for humans to do alone. And when paired with creativity and intuition of scientists, the possibilities of discoveries are limitless. Now, AI, as you all know, is great at ingesting vast quantities of information and spotting patterns. But what it's not great at is deep reasoning or deciding what data is trustworthy. Human experts are the reverse. By combining AI pattern recognition with human expertise, we can unlock powerful insights and leverage the strengths of both. The result is a true partnership between human experts and AI superpowers to reach scientific breakthroughs faster. This is where the life sciences industry, with its troves of data and a heritage of peer-reviewed research, really has an edge and a potential to make a tremendous impact. Generative AI can use its vast computational power to enhance outputs, create more efficient workflows. And bio-domain-specific large language models can enable biologists to uncover novel insights, combining the power of AI with cutting-edge science to discover and develop new medicines for complex diseases. But there are also many other, more practical applications. I believe that generative AI is nothing less than a revolution for the right-brained in society. These are the intuitive, creative, free thinkers who've been perhaps left out by the tech revolution now for too long. For years, we've hidden the advances behind lines of code. And today, access to the world's collective intelligence lies at the end of a simple, well-crafted query. Users no longer have to understand these models or how they're constructed. The code behind them are to figure out how they're made in order to extract their benefits. The way we interact with a GPT is simply through a query in response to a prompt. We ask a question, we get an answer, precisely the way we as humans interact with each other every day. So language is the way we navigate a GPT, which makes this technology as equalizing and democratic as it is as it is transformative. By eliminating barriers, this technology becomes accessible to billions of people, empowering them with unprecedented knowledge. Now, we need to scale this democratizing force to achieve its true potential and ensure that AI is for the benefit of all. On that note, there are real questions about who is developing this technology and who will benefit most. At present, a handful of major corporations own and control the leading models. Now, what that means is businesses and governments are entirely out of the loop. The capacity and compute required to train AI models are cost prohibitive for smaller corporations. Now, as a result, our future lies in the hands of a small number of players with privileged access and unlimited resources. This could have profound consequences in every country and society overall. We have been here before, and we know what can go wrong. We've lived the decade of social media, disinformation, and internet harms, and we know what could happen. So while early generative AI leaders are making public statements, attending high-level government meetings, and stating the importance of regulating this world-leading technology, this is being done much on their terms. And we are effectively repeating, potentially, the same mistakes of the past, that era that we referred to as the move fast and break things era. So what is our proposed response to all of this? Governments worldwide have recognized the imperative of creating frameworks to regulate AI development. While the US has been speaking with industry and talking to the leaders of these companies about AI governance, the EU hopes that its AI Act will be the world's first comprehensive AI law, using a risk-based approach, arguing these technologies must be evaluated for potential dangers. But getting this balance right is a real challenge. Last week, 150 executives signed an open letter arguing that the proposed act, the AI Act in Europe, could potentially harm Europe's competitiveness and technological sovereignty. These executives argue that the rules are too extreme and could impede rather than foster AI innovation. Now, many governments are engaging through various multi-stakeholder fora, like the Global Partnership on AI, which operates out of the OECD in Paris. Now, the Global Partnership in AI was a brainchild of Canada and France when they had their G7 presidencies. And I had the opportunity to chair the organization for 2 years. And the exciting thing about it is there's now 29 member countries, and they're open to new members all the time. So it's an idea that you bring experts together, and you bring governments together, and you literally riff on and try to solve these problems and take this on. And I think it's a really important organization. At the same time, companies are actively ramping up individual efforts to manage this agenda and coordinate international approaches to responsible AI. The UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak, for example, has demonstrated tremendous leadership by convening global AI research groups and establishing a foundation models task force to fine-tune regulation, with efforts culminating in the UK hosting a global AI safety summit later this year. Now, these initiatives to prioritize safety and responsibility in AI development are vital, but if we really are to shape the future of humanity with AI, we have to go further. We need to establish a common understanding, holding ourselves and others accountable for the ethical implications of the application of this technology. We need a consistent, unified, and global regulatory framework to set the guardrails for development and governance. This is, of course, not easy to accomplish. Yet we must remember that the UN and ITU were founded on the principles of global cooperation and technological advancement. And as we've seen over the past few days, these organizations have the influence and the capability to convene world leaders and experts to address the challenges that affect our entire world. And I believe there's no more important or urgent challenge than the one of ethical development and deployment of AI for the benefit of all citizens. Ethics have always been the core of society. The works of Socrates, Kant, and Mill laid the foundation of ethical principles, emphasizing the importance of altruism and understanding oneself. Mill's harm principle, in particular, is relevant as we seek to cultivate freedom for AI's development, whilst ensuring that no harm is caused to others in the process. As AI increasingly permeates every aspect of our lives, we must ensure that ethical considerations guide its development and implementation. Which brings me to the open source models movement. A recently leaked memo, you guys would have read it, called "We Have No Moat" by a Google executive. It was posited that Google and Microsoft backed generative AI models, including BARD and GPT-4, may have already be facing an existential crisis by smaller, more agile open source models, which are attracting top researchers and reducing their competitive edge. Now, at the same time, though, while open source technology may be accessible to more people, it's not necessarily free or democratic. It still requires significant investments to deploy and train and license these models. Furthermore, the cost and concentration of the infrastructure required to train and operate these models, and the concentration of market power that tech already has, creates a natural monopoly that is difficult for new entrants to disrupt. As a result, the future will likely be dominated by existing players, with little room for newcomers to challenge their position. If this ever-changing, ever-growing landscape, what it illustrates now more than ever is that governments and international institutions like the UN and ITU and business leaders, what we do now is absolutely critical. Now, we learned during the pandemic that a virus doesn't carry a passport. And AI, too, it knows no borders. Therefore, we need a global commitment to ensure that AI in all of its evolutions is used responsibly and for the benefit of humanity. Just as Norway has established the seed vault in Svalbard to preserve the biodiversity of our planet, we must think creatively and come up with similarly monumental approaches to AI. We should reject pessimism and passivity and work to construct a series of foundational principles to guide this AI age together. And if we succeed, we will endow mankind with an era of freedom, enlightenment, prosperity, and optimism. But a global commitment to better regulation is by itself not enough. We need the people leading AI companies and AI research to take a proactive stand to make AI responsible by design. One example of incredible leadership in this space is Anthropic, founded by former OpenAI researchers whose objective is to develop better, more explainable AI that can align with human values and ethics. One of their projects, which I'm sure many of you are familiar with, Claude, has a set of ethical principles that helps define right and wrong. Anthropic calls this the bot's constitution, which is drawn from the UN Universal Declaration of Human Rights. Now, Anthropic invites anyone who uses Claude to provide feedback, and also as part of their effort, they try to make Claude more aligned with global values and perspectives to improve its reliability and interoperability. This is the kind of leadership that we need. As we deepen the relationship with and the understanding of this technology, we must recognize that the soul of society lies in our respect for human rights. It is time to extend this to include AI, ensuring that its development aligns with our core values. We must remember that humanity has always been the driving force behind innovation, and have faith in our capacity to shape the future with integrity and compassion. By doing so, we can ensure that all individuals in society are protected rather than threatened by AI. Now, good examples of this already exist. In the space of child protection from online abuse and exploitation, a field that I've been working in for over a decade as the founder of the We Protect Global Alliance. Now, there's emerging AI technologies that are being used to combat online threats to children. In 2020, the United Nations Interregional Crime and Justice Research Institute, UNICRI, with the support of the Ministry of the Interior of the UAE, launched the AI for Safer Children initiative. This is a global hub that provides law enforcement with AI tools to combat sexual abuse and exploitation of children. The AI for Safer Internet hub counts over 70 AI-enabled tools today, and 350 officers from 90 UN member states have access to it, receiving direct training and capacity-building support on the use of AI tools and techniques to combat this heinous crime and bring those responsible to justice. In closing, we find ourselves at a pivotal moment in history. AI has the potential to revolutionize society and advance human progress in unprecedented ways. But we must ensure that it is not at the expense of losing what it truly means to be human. By collectively adhering to ethical principles and holding ourselves accountable, we can ensure that AI becomes a force for good in the interest of all. Let us embrace this moment with conviction and determination to guide this renaissance in AI in a way that is right for our world. Thank you.
Thank you both, Stuart and Joanna, for setting up the stage on both angles and lenses on the risk and also the opportunities that AI is providing to us today. As our conversation is not just about technology, but about how we evolve our human values and what's the impact of AI on civilization, I'd like us to take a moment quickly with you, Stuart, to probably explain a bit more about what means aligning human values with AI, just to make sure that we have the same language altogether.
Yeah, so the word alignment occurs frequently in the discussions about AI safety. And I think there's actually some, it may have led to some misunderstanding. So first of all, I do not expect AI systems ever to be aligned with human values in the sense that they have perfect knowledge of what humans want the future to be like. They're always going to be uncertain. And that's important because it's precisely that uncertainty that gives us control over the machine. If you think about it, right? If a system knows that it has absolutely the correct objective that it should optimize, it has no further need of input from humans. And in fact, it's going to ignore us jumping up and down and saying, stop, stop, you know, you're ruining everything, right? Because it believes it has the perfect objective. And that's exactly the problem with classical AI systems that believe they have the perfect objective, right? That decouples them from humans. So that's the first point. Alignment does not mean knowing perfectly, and we will never actually achieve alignment in that sense. Another important point is, well, there's a lot of misunderstanding, right? Some people think it means building in a certain set of human values, and as soon as you say the word values, then people's sensitivity antennas go bleep, 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 right? You're talking about somebody else's religion or some particular cultural group or whatever. So nothing could be further from the truth. The right way to think about this is there are 8 billion people on Earth, and the AI systems need to start understanding what each one of those 8 billion people prefer about the future or disprefer about the future. And lastly, we do not want AI systems to have human goals. So it does not mean having the same goals as humans. For example, if I want to drink a cup of coffee, I do not want my domestic robot to also want to drink a cup of coffee, right? I want it to help me have a cup of coffee, but not to want to drink coffee. If I, heaven forbid, wanted to be ruler of the universe, I do not want my robot to also want to be ruler of the universe. And the problem with the way we train large language models is that we are training them to have human goals, because the humans who generated all of that text had human goals in writing and speaking. They wanted to get elected to high office. They wanted to convince somebody to marry them. They wanted to sell something to somebody. And so if you're training these systems to imitate human linguistic behavior, you're training them to have human goals, which is not what we want.
Thank you for that perspective. Joanna, you mentioned human and AI in the loop and the hybrid approach of them. As we're thinking about human values and the alignment, how can you explain, from your point of view, the value alignment that you proposed? What that value alignment comes in terms of ownership, renaissance, making things better, in complementary to what Stuart said?
So I think, first of all, we talk about human in the loop because no matter how good a generative pre-trained transformer could be, and how marvelous and how much information has been ingested, when you're looking at areas like human biology and the complexity of science, and you're trying to enable or empower someone to leverage these systems to make decisions, you need to focus on domain-specific development of models that support that process, that are very are focused on particular activities, for instance. Like, you have to ensure that this human in the loop and the training of a specific large language model that does something that works in conjunction with other more general models, to ensure that that can actually lead to a reliable output for a scientist. Like, for instance, what we use AI for at Benevolent is to understand disease biology and to combine all understanding of everything that's ever been written about a disease with other multimodal data, so that scientists can reason across complex data sources and come up with something novel, so that can lead to the development of potentially a new treatment for disease. So in our world, the human in the loop is still an absolutely vital connection, and we build our technology with scientists, for scientists, and in the support of science. And this is very important because these generative models will never be able to achieve that level of capability, that nuance that is required in order to understand all those factors and to make a decision that could lead to the development of a new medicine.
So as we propose processes to include humans in development AI systems, I'd like to ask you, Stuart, what are the real challenges today, technically speaking, to embed human values into AI systems, if we wanted to? What are the limitations? Why you can't do that today?
So let's look again at the large language models. So there are multiple training phases. I think the vast majority of the training is directly from just plain human text that is collected from the internet, from other text archives. And you're just training it to predict the next word. You're training it to imitate human linguistic behavior, which seems to produce a lot of undesirable behaviors. And then there's a phase called reinforcement learning from human feedback. And what happens there is that we have human beings who are paid to rank potential outputs from the system and to say, well, okay, the system could have generated this response or this response. Which one is better from your point of view as a human being? You know, and those ranking operatives receive a fair amount of training to make sure they're all on the same page about what we're trying to get these systems to do. And this is a way of basically having a flow of information about human preferences from the human rankers into the system. So the system tries to get better at choosing the output that the human rankers actually prefer. So you can think of this as a corrective phase to the, I would say, the improper training phase that happened beforehand. And it certainly helps. OpenAI has figures showing how much this phase reduces various types of undesirable behavior. And I think overall, it's, I think, a 39% reduction in the willingness to answer improper questions, like how do I kill myself, or how do I kill lots of other people with a biological weapon. And it's better at refusing to answer those questions. But it still does answer those questions, and every day out there in the wild, people learn new ways to get the system to misbehave. And so it's not a complete solution. If you think about it from the point of view of a regulator, and you say, okay, we know OpenAI has been sued for defamation because the large language model output a completely false accusation about a real person. Let's say large language models should not defame real individuals. The regulator doesn't understand why you can't just do that, right? And the reason you can't just do that is because the large language models are impenetrable black boxes. Black box does not necessarily mean that they keep it a secret, right? The same problem applies to all the open source models. There's just a trillion parameter system that we really do not understand its internal principles of operation. There's nowhere you can go inside and say, okay, let's stop the defamation from happening right here, right? And one might say, okay, let's go back to the lab and come up with systems where we can stop it from defaming people, from giving advice on biological weapons, and so on. I think that's the purpose of the Chinese regulations, actually, is to get the companies, at least in their public-facing language models, to go back to the lab and see if they can fix some of these problems before they cause too much trouble. More generally, right, if I think about assistance game solvers, if we take a very literal view of this, where the AI system is learning an explicit representation human preferences. I think there are engineering problems, right? You really do need to do this for 8 billion people. For a lot of those people, we don't have very much data about them. And so you have to extrapolate from other similar people. But in fact, I think one of the things we will discover as we start figuring out how to do this is that actually people are more similar than you might imagine. There's a lot of talk about, how Western values and Eastern values and Global South, they all want different things and they all have different philosophies of life and so on. But actually, I think there's a lot of empirical research in the, there's a field called well-being and human development indices and so on, that find a great deal of commonality in what people want. They want physical security, they want food, shelter, warmth, they want social interaction with others, et cetera, et cetera. And these are things that really everyone should be entitled to as a human being. So I'm actually fairly optimistic that we can build systems that can learn what it is that humans want the future to be like, and then help us get there.
Well, assuming that we all agree on that, and you both talk about coexistence between human and AI, if we are in a day in the near future where we have access to safe and reliable AI, how do you see preserving human vitality with AI systems? What is our role at that time? Because we're talking about civilization now, we want to harness this new form of intelligence to do new things. Right now, we're implementing new applications with LLMs, we're trying to adapt. But what is the real opportunity if we have robust and safe and reliable and careful AI systems? What is the role of human vitality in that future? You can ask both of you, actually.
I mean, as I said on my last slide, human vitality is a human value, right? We care that we remain vital as a civilization, that our children not be couch potatoes, that we not live in the Wall-E world. And so our AI systems should understand that and should actually resist being used in ways that reduce our autonomy, right? And this is not something that is unfamiliar to any parent. Right? At some point, the parent says to the child, no, you have to put your own shoes on today. And this is just something you have to do, right? We know the metaphor of a helicopter parent that sort of helicopters in to fix any problem that their child faces, and that's a very unhealthy way of parenting. We do not want AI systems to be like that, and so they should learn that we don't want them to be like that, and they won't be like that. So it could actually empower us to get past, right? If you think about history, most of history is about people wanting to be not dead. Right? It's pretty simple, right? And it's difficult. Yeah. It's really difficult. We're getting better at it, but most of history has been about that. And hopefully, we can get past that period and actually have a bit more of a choice about what we want the world and our lives to be like. So I'm still, optimistic. Some people might say irrationally optimistic. But and I'm happy that humanity is back in the office and has read the email. There is, as Joanna said, a great deal of work to do for governments and for the AI community.
We'd like to hear about it from you as well, Joanna. How do you see that human vitality shaping up?
Well, first of all, I think picking up on a number of things that Stuart said, I'm happy to hear you believe we can train this and manage this evolution in some way, guide it. I was taking on board what you were saying about we don't want these systems to have human values necessarily. So this nuance is absolutely vital to understand. So we've all lived through the past decade or 15 years of a world where social media became such an immediate and useful part of our lives. But having been working in these companies and then been responsible for ensuring internet safety and security, the complexities of how do you regulate in an environment which is compared to this, simplistic in its at the stage of where we were at that time. And we did not get it right as a society. And many of the social problems that we work on today, whether you're a parent or a politician or a professor or a teacher or whatever, the things that young people are facing in particular, and people all across society, many of these things were as a result of the fact that we didn't grip this as a society about what we wanted things to be like. And my concern is that we as a society, we've let these models are released into the wild, and we're just now trying to figure it out. And it is a very daunting task, and I think it's important that governments are trying, but all of the people in this room, the experts and the disciplines that you represent, you have to be very loud voices. You have to, as Stuart said today, offer up ideas and provide creative solutions so that those people who are responsible for keeping people safe, whether you're in law enforcement or in government or just a concerned citizen, we need ideas. We need tangible regulation. We need to come together and really define this next phase of humanity in a world where this is part of our reality. And I don't think it's easy, and I think there are many sort of doomsday scenarios that we're concerned about, but it can be done. But it literally takes everyone in this room. We all have a responsibility to communicate our ideas, to provide, the evidence that you can. Many of you in academia and research can provide the evidence that we need to better understand these models and to chart a path forward.
I think this is important to highlight that part, that we are positively looking at building a future where humanity thrives, because safety, security will be tackled. Hopefully, governance will probably win, and regulations will be put in place in a way that promotes both innovation, but at the same time, carefully provides security and safety and AI that can deliver value and promote human values. I'd like to do a small exercise if you're open to it. Can you think of what would be the most transformative AI applications in the next decade across all applications?
So I think education, because it's been 60 years actually since the first AI tutoring systems were deployed. And for about 59 of those 60 years, the AI tutoring systems could not understand language, so they could not have any conversation with the student. They put canned text on the screen, the student could click on a menu, and that's pretty much how the interaction went. And secondly, the AI systems did not understand any of the content that they were supposed to be teaching. So I've likened this to me trying to teach string theory in Laotian, which I don't speak, and string theory, which I don't understand. I don't think it would go so well. But I think this is one of the potentially huge benefits of the large language models, is that I would say for content, maybe through the end of high school and in some areas college level, I think it is capable of conducting a conversation. Students can ask questions, and the system can answer that in a helpful way, sometimes by saying, actually, I'm not going to answer that, but I'm going to give you a clue, or let's go through this again and see if we can get you to answer it. So there's still work to be done, but I think we have to figure out a delivery structure that can do this in a vast array of languages and get it to the places where it is most needed, where there is no education, or almost none. And that can have an enormous benefit, allowing a sort of leapfrogging in terms of development that could be so beneficial to so many millions or even billions of people who don't have access to education at all.
What would you say that's most
I think
transformative?
that is very exciting to think about. You know, since the beginning of time, you know, it was access to information and learning, you know, really determined, you know, who excelled and succeeded in society. And, you know, we saw this democratization with, obviously, the internet over the past, almost 50 years now. And it's been incredible, but there's still been a lot of people left out. And what I said in my remarks was about this whole right brain side of the world. If you have a child who hates coding and is not inclined to maths and doesn't have doesn't want to study science, there was a lot of concern and from parents that that child would be left out and would miss out on a lot of opportunities. You know, when a large language model can generate, you know, fantastic code and answer a question that would have required you to understand how operationally, you know, you have to build a system, you know, and you can get that answer in an instant. That is such an empowering experience. And you can see the eyes light up of kids who maybe have really felt left out of this revolution. And I think that's one of the most exciting things about these developments. And I mean, there are enormous positives, and, you know, we need to marshal this force. And literally, I do believe that this generative AI can be this middleware for innovation and creativity. And we see it at this conference. The applications are just incredible, what people are doing and how they're using it. And this empowering and unleashing of human creativity is really unprecedented. And we don't know where it's going to take us, but I know it's going to be in very positive and dynamic ways.
That's a very positive note that you're bringing forward. We started this conversation about the future of humanity and civilization. And when we prepared this, we discussed about how human intelligence has brought us so far. And now we have new forms of intelligence in front of us. How far do you think we can go in terms of civilization? What else can we create besides agriculture and technology and culture? What else do you imagine we can collectively create? And if we wanted to go there, what should be at our disposition towards that future?
Wow.
It's a loaded question.
Well, so in another version of the slide that I showed about we could have a better civilization, and I talked about health, education, science, I also had the word politics. But people would laugh when I put that up, so I took it off, right? Because it seems so hopeless. But really, that's the core of, I think, a lot of the problems in the world is political failure, coordination failure. We all know this is a sort of prisoner's dilemma that we're in, and we all end up defecting, meaning that we end up with a situation that's worse for everybody instead of cooperating, which means that we're all better off. And there are all kinds of reasons: distrust, miscommunication, the local interests of political leaders to create that distrust and hatred of the other, and all these other reasons that we know about. It's not for want of trying, right? I mean, there are institutes of political theory and institutes of international relations and thousands or maybe even millions of diplomats talking to each other all over the world, and still we fail. So maybe, and it's starting to become almost sort of a knee-jerk reaction, pick one unsolvable problem, say maybe AI will solve it. But I think there is interesting work on how AI systems can act as intermediaries that guide two parties towards a mutually beneficial solution. I hope that more work will be done in that area, and then I can put politics back on the slide.
So politics will come at the level of agriculture and culture. What about you? What do you imagine contribution of new forms of intelligence will be on our civilization?
Well, you know, when you think about the Sustainable Development Goals and what's happened, this acceleration that's happened in the past year, and rethinking, you know, what is possible in that, given this new reality, is incredibly exciting. I mean, just looking at every aspect of society, what is possible to, you know, provide equal access to education, to opportunities. You know, this empowering force, which we are all experiencing now, is truly one of those moments, those vectors of transformation, which I think forces us to relook at some of the challenges and look for, you know, ways to shorten the cycles and to really make a big impact. And I've never, you know, I've been in technology for 38 years, and I've never seen such things move at this pace or so much opportunity be in front of us. And, you know, we have to remain optimistic. We can't panic. I go back to the Hitchhiker's Guide to Galaxy. Don't panic. Focus on, tangible, realistic solutions that solve problems, but also, you know, marshal this incredible force for creativity and innovation and opportunity.
With these encouraging notes, I'd like to conclude this panel and inviting all of you to ponder on this conversation as insight about the transformation of civilization, and some of these ideas that were shared today, I think, would be a starting point for our global collaboration towards this direction. Join me again to make an applause for our esteemed speakers. Thank you so much.
Thank you.